Hey everyone, welcome back to the Power of Two podcast. I'm Amber.
And I'm Jay.
We are back with a brand new episode. Today we're going to be talking about the season three episode You Do You, which is episode five, but actually what would have been the second episode of the season. This episode has an interesting beginning.
Yeah, I really
Um,
liked it.
Starts off with this young girl and she's with her boyfriend. She's at this, what would you call it? A petrol station,
Gas station.
gas station. And I guess he goes in there. What does he go in there for?
I don't remember. He just leaves her alone to go get something. And then while she is waiting for him in the car, this man comes outside her door. And then all of a sudden she's spelled and she's saying Mepte Ama over and over again.
Yeah, and then the boyfriend comes out of the gas station and the girlfriend decides to basically she runs him over. She just slams on the accelerator, slams on the gas, and she just runs him flat over and she just hits him. And that's how really the episode opens.
I thought it was a cool teaser.
It felt very supernatural to me.
Mhm.
It really reminded me of the early seasons of Supernatural, how they would open an episode. They would have stuff like that happen.
Yeah, it was a lot like one of those supernatural episodes, but it also reminded me of Angel and Buffy because they had episodes open that way too.
Yeah, it was just very supernatural, very CW. And then we got the episode title appeared, and that was pretty much it.
So we'll just dig right into the monster of the week, which we later find out is called Oman. He's based on Narcissus from Greek mythology. His narcissism is his undoing. He's like lusting over his own reflection that he falls in and drowns.
I mean, I thought the demon in this episode, monster or whatever they're calling them now, I thought he was interesting, but I felt like he didn't have a personality.
Yeah, I did like the setup and the concept. I like what they did for this episode, but it fell a little flat for me because the Vanquish was pretty much non-existent and a little anticlimactic. It was not.
I mean, he just didn't have a personality to me. If you look at demons in the past, like Viralis, for example, Viralis had a personality. He wasn't just walking around saying Matam or whatever the hell he was doing, walking around looking shady. He had a personality. And I feel like I would have felt more invested in the storyline had they given him a little bit more, maybe another scene where he interacts with them. Maybe we get to see a little bit of a darker side to him because he didn't seem threatening to me. It was just like, here's this guy and he's the bad guy, and there it is. And I felt like the writers really could have flushed out his character a lot more.
No, I agree. I agree. I think what happened is that the writers wanted to tackle narcissism because that is a popular concept that's thrown around these days, accusing people of being narcissists, being raised by narcissist parents, things like that. I feel like in the writer's room, they're like, hey, let's do an episode about this. Let's make that come to life through a demon. And they didn't dig deep enough beyond that because, like I said, it really fell flat at the end.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you.
This is a consistent problem that I see on this show. Even back as far as season one, they introduce these concepts, but it's almost like they don't know how to make it work completely. For example, in season one, they did an episode, which is one of my favorites, called Switches and Stones. And they wanted to rework the Medusa myth into making a statement about believing women. Medusa is a classic villain, and she turns men to stone who look at her. But in the reboot, they wrote her as a witch who's a victim of abuse, who isn't believed. So I believe she's cursed or creates a curse that men who look at her become stone. And I think that it's a really good twist to the original myth. So I thought they were going to do this with Oman. I thought they were going to do like a twist about it, but literally they had a discussion on how to vanquish him, and they just repeated the myth. Oh yeah, make him look at his reflection and he'll fall in. And that's what happened.
It was so anticlimactic. Like you said, it was so anticlimactic. I was like, okay, Where's the scream? Where's the energy? And he just looks at himself into the puddle. I'm just like, really?
And what I thought was really stupid was towards the end, Macy falls under Oman's spell, and she's, for whatever reason, she's just strong enough to break out of it on her own. No one else has been able to do it, but I guess because she's a charmed one, she's able to do it. She breaks out of his spell, and one of them's like, throw me the puddle. And then Macy literally throws the puddle, like in the Grimlocks episode in the original show, and they CGI'd this ridiculous looking puddle of water and they put it in front of Oman, and then he just takes a huge beeline towards it and looks at his reflection and checks himself out and falls in.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Lack of suspense, lack of anything. I think it would have been better if he had had a reaction to doing that. We could have got some more out of the actor, because I really didn't feel like we got anything out of him. It was just like he was there, and that was just like...
You know what his Vanquish reminded me of? There was an episode in the original Charmed. I don't quite remember which one, but it was where there's this lawyer or some executive guy who's pissing off Cole. And
he walks towards the elevator and Cole sets him on fire.
Yeah, and there's literally no reaction in the actors. You can tell that the actor doesn't respond in any way, but they CGI the flames over him as he's walking away, and then they dub in a scream, but the movements do not match at all, so it just looks really ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember that. I think that is from the episode where they become superheroes. It's season 5. I know that. It's season 5.
Yeah, because it was at that point where Cole was trying to be good for Phoebe, but isn't quite able to do it. So here's something that really excited me over this season that ultimately did not play out the way I wanted it to. But when they said that Oman is connected to the Chupa Alma, which in turn is connected to their allergy storyline, I got really excited because they were basically setting up all these unique monsters to come out of this portal that tears through the sky and stuff. And that kind of reminded me of classic Buffy. You know, they had the Hellmouth, which was a reason for all these different monsters and demons to set up a Monster of the Week episode. And then Legacies did the same thing, because the Vampire Diaries in the originals is just a drama over these vampires. But then what they decided to do for Legacy is like, let's create a show that is in the Vampire Diaries universe, but let's create something that brings in all these unique monsters we've never seen before. So they created this dimension called Malivore, and it spits out all these previously unknown monsters and demons. And that's how they did it. So I thought that Charmed was finally paying attention to what's working and doing the Monster of the Week format, like in Supernatural and Legacies. So I was really excited about that. But they stopped after, I think after this episode, they did these two with the Chupa Alma and Oman. And then the next episode, we can talk more about next time. But then they kind of stopped doing that.
Well, I think that might have something to do with what Joey Falco said on Twitter. He mentioned that the CW doesn't like Monster of the Week episodes, which doesn't really make any sense to me whatsoever, because that's what they do on Legacies.
It makes zero sense to me. That was what Supernatural did. It was the bread and butter, and they lasted 15 seasons.
And that's what the original Charm did, and that lasted 8 years. That's a long time.
Yeah, and even if they didn't want to do classic self-contained episodes, they could do a mixed bag. That's what a lot of shows end up doing that are strictly Monster of the Week or procedural, is that eventually they do move away from it a little bit and have a long-running story arc that lasts through the season, but then throw in a few Monster of the Week episodes in the season. And they could have done that easily with this show. But like I said, this whole storyline, it did play out, but they dropped the whole Monster of the Week thing. They mostly talked about it, but after 2 or 3 episodes, they stopped doing that.
Yeah.
We can get more into that into the next episode. So moving on to the subplots of this episode, we have Mel getting into it with her dean, Dean Eldon, over a gender studies textbook.
Yeah, I thought that it was interesting that she wanted to introduce a specific type of book, and the dean wanted to use her book that she had written. The only thing is, Mel said that, quote unquote, that it was ancient, even though it was only published in 2013, which made me feel really old. Like when she said 2013, that's 2013, that's ancient. I'm just like, it's not ancient. That's not even a decade ago. But whatever. That's just Mel being Mel. That's the sort of thing that she would say anyway, because we know how Mel is. But no, I just thought that I was really hoping what they were going to do with the dean is they were going to do like a Rex and Hannah type situation, with the dean being this evil demon or an evil witch or something. That would have been funny to me, having her like throwing all these curveballs at her. But for whatever reason, they didn't do that.
I didn't think about it that way. That would have been cool if they did that. Because while I do like the subplots in general, having just one strict storyline can get a little tiresome, especially if you're not feeling the episode that week. Having a subplot or a couple subplots in the mix breaks up the monotony of it. If they're going to do storylines like this, which let's just be honest, they are hot button topics, I would prefer that they infuse a little bit of the supernatural and magical into it. Whereas now it kind of just feels like, okay, well, Mel's just being Mel. You know what I mean? It just feels like a little bit forced.
Yeah, I agree.
Even Mel says it. She's like, why can't I fight demons with ease, but I can't do this in the classroom, or I can't do this at work? It's such a divide between their personal magical drama and then the real world. I would like to see that merging more.
Like I said, that would have been fun if they'd have done that with the dean. But
Yeah.
they're evil. But I did like the scene where she does get her way and she does get to read the book. And I really like the scene where Mel walks out and she feels really empowered and she's really proud of herself for doing that. I thought that was a good scene.
I can't believe that textbooks are so expensive. I mean, just a side discussion, because I remember when I wanted to go to college, just the textbooks alone were ridiculous. Sometimes they cost as high as $900.
Oh my God.
I appreciated that Mel talked about that they're making students pay for these ridiculously overpriced textbooks. And also, when they come out with a new edition, then the previous one dramatically loses value. So they have to make you get the newest edition. So they're constantly making the same book more expensive every year, if that makes sense. It's like
Yeah,
taking one book, making little updates, and then making it like $900 again.
that's one way to make money, I suppose. They'll be
Mhm.
raking it in. So this episode gave Harry a little bit of a side plot, a side story with Jordan. They go off and they end up somewhere very, very cold.
Yeah, I think they go to look at some Norse runes.
Yeah, I think they were just going to like look up the stone tablets, look up some lead. And, the plot for this was kind of,
It seemed a little bit Indiana Jones.
yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, like, what are they thinking of? Like, what is this? What is going on here? So they bring up the fact that Harry's age is a problem.
Yeah, and then they did the classic thing where Jordan gives Harry grief about being older, and then Harry's like, I'm not old, and then his back cracks really
It was
loudly.
so cringe. It was like, where is this coming from? Because the episode before, they're all like making him look all youthful and they're talking about trying to make everything like all sexual with the way they're talking and things. I'm just sitting there thinking, now he's like acting like an old man in this episode. It just didn't. I could understand if they were doing that before, but they keep chopping and changing what they want to do with him. One week he's really old, and then the next week he isn't. Like if you look at season one, he was like an older guy
Yeah.
and he had sexuality and things like that, but they did it in a way that was like you knew what to expect from Harry. Whereas I guess they did kind of contrast him a lot from the pilot, but he was still the same person. Season two, he's like a totally different character, in
Yeah.
my opinion, in a lot of ways. So season three, they've established who he is now. Now they want to like go back to him, oh, he's old and all this. And I just think, really?
Yeah. And it's also inconsistent because as a white lighter, he shouldn't be having old age problems anyway.
No. He's supposed to be immoral. And he's supposed to have gone through all of this already.
I think the writers just wanted a reason to have Jordan say microaggression. I think what they did is that they said, let's put our only two male characters, have them live their Indiana Jones fantasy, and have some way for Jordan to relate to Harry and bring up microaggressions. It just felt so out of place and disjointed. It was one of my least favorite scenes in that episode. And the thing is, it could have been more interesting because obviously they were going there in the first place. Because at the beginning of the episode, Harry finds what looks like caveman drawings and he connects it back to these Norse runes. So he and Jordan go look for them. That could have been more interesting. They could have had some sort of guardian of the runes. They could have had, if they wanted to do an Indiana Jones type thing, they could have had a more interesting trap or some riddle, something like that to make it more intense.
And also, there's a scene where I think it's Harry, or is it Jordan? They step on something and all of these ancient darts start firing at them. So that was their Indiana Jones moment, I guess you could say.
It's like they showed up, had this conversation, this very fake sounding conversation that made my eyes roll. And then, okay, let's move forward with the plot. And then they activate a trap. So the scene's over.
So the next subplot I wanted to talk about, and this is kind of a pretty major thing that happens in this episode. The girls are talking, I believe the girls are talking, and there's a knock on the door. Macy gets the door, and some woman appears out of nowhere. I don't think they've ever met her before. And she says, Macy Bourne. And she's like, yeah, this is for you, blah, 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 blah. You've just inherited safe space.
I feel like if they were going to completely write out Julian and all of that season two mess, at least it would make sense for her to now own safe space. But it really, truly felt too easy. You know what I mean? It just feels like lazy writing because it's not like they were married. It's not like she was the love of his life. Out of all the people that he was connected to or knew, he gave it to Macy.
It makes no sense to me whatsoever. They were together for like what, 8 months or however long. They didn't know each other for years and years and years. And you're telling me, out of everybody he knows, he's going to give safe space to Macy. Were they even like together towards the end? Because I can't remember. I thought they broke up.
I don't know. So, how would he even have time to will that to her?
I was just like, oh my God. And I think the reason that they did that is because they wanted to keep safe space around.
They wanted to wrap up all the season two stuff. They wanted it to make a non issue. They just wanted to move forward. So it's like, okay, all the safe space drama is over. Let's have Macy own it. So let's just move forward with this new storyline. And the easiest way to do that is to make sure Macy owns it so that the command center is never in jeopardy. They don't have to keep writing all the ways of how they were having to sneak in to use the command center. Now it's just easy. Now they can just flow right in and out like it's their own house.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I found this scene very odd because there's a scene where both Mel and Macy are in safe space, and Mel is walking up the stairs. Do we know why she was going upstairs? Because I don't remember why she was going up there.
No, I don't.
I just thought it was so out of place. Like, where is she going? Because I thought upstairs was where the boxing thing was. I just felt like that was a reason for them to use the set. Like, to be honest, it was
Yeah.
like they wanted to get her in a different location. But there's a scene where I'm trying to remember what her name is.
Swan.
Swan. You know, that's how much of an impact Swan has made on me. I really don't care about Swan at all. Like, yeah, she's cute, she's adorable or whatever, but she is so cringe to me. Oh my God. So there's a scene where they're talking about Namaste Nectarine. They're talking about drinks. And I was just like, whoever came up with that idea, that is like literally my idea of hell, being in like a woke space and they're talking like that. I mean, I'm sorry, but she really does get on my nerves. The whole thing, just like super liberal, super woke, and Namaste Nectarine and all this. And I'm just like, no, go away. Like, I don't want to Oh, I couldn't. She gets on my nerves. She really does.
But there was a huge opportunity for some character development here, and they did lean into it, but then it just abruptly didn't go anywhere. Swan has always been on top of everything going on in Safe Space. You can tell it's very important to her. She's just that type of person who takes her work very seriously, and she clearly enjoys her work, her job. And Macy, now in charge of the whole thing, she's putting her charm duties first, and the safe space stuff is being a bit neglected. And Swan gets pissed off and confronts Macy and tells her, no, you need to do your job. You need to take this as seriously as I do. And I thought that Macy was going to say, you know what? You're right. I'm going to make you second in command, or I'm going to make you the executive manager or something. I mean, I wasn't expecting her to like give her the whole thing like how Julian gave it to her, but I was expecting something to come of it where she would just leave all of those duties to Swan, who I think would probably do a good job because she's doing it anyway. But that didn't happen because we see Macy take care of the meetings herself.
All I know is I don't care about Swan. I don't find her interesting. I don't find her entertaining. She's that side character that gets on your tits that you don't really want to be on the show, but she's on the show. And I kind of felt that way about Lucy to begin with. In the first season, I was like, oh my God, who is this character that looks like she's just
Yeah.
walked off clueless? But in time, we got to love that about her. Like, I loved Lucy towards the end. I was like, oh my God, she's such a ditzy airhead, but she's funny about it. And she gave some humor to the show.
I don't think she was a ditzy airhead. I think she was just very self-absorbed.
Yeah, she's like a Mean Girls type
Yeah,
character.
exactly. And the thing is, Lucy was only there for one season and she left a bigger impact than Swan did. And Swan's been there for 2 seasons, and she's exactly the same person she was when we were introduced to her, just a one-dimensional character.
She just shows up and she's like, yes, I can help you with whatever you need or whatever.
I have no
It's like,
life of my own.
exactly. Like, what does she do when she goes home? Does she have a boyfriend? Does she have a girlfriend? Does she have hobbies and stuff? Like, just
Yeah.
give us something
She
that
quite
we.
literally is a person that is just tied to Safe Space. When they wrote Safe Space, they needed someone who worked there who just embodies what that place is about. And that's where Swan came in. And that's all she's been.
The thing is, the actress that plays her, she can act. She can actually act. And when they actually give her good content, she can actually deliver. Because I remember that episode where she got possessed by that woman. I can't remember what her name was, the ghost woman that was after Jordan. I thought she was really good in that episode, even without the effects and whatnot. I thought she was really good. She embodied that really well, I thought.
For a show that really wants to be diverse and give these moments to POC actors, you'd think they would write more for an actress like her who could probably handle more intense scenes. Hopefully, for season 4, they will give her more to do.
So the next subplot we're going to talk about is Maggie's movement therapy, her dance, which I don't recall them ever mentioning that Maggie was a dancer or had any interest in dance.
But I think we as an audience just assume she dances because we're familiar with her Disney work.
It was
I
just
think
like, let's give Sarah Jeffrey like a reason to start dancing. Like, it came out of nowhere. I felt that they should have given that storyline previously in a previous episode. They could have mentioned, oh, I'm going to dance class or whatever. But it's
yeah.
just out of the blue, she's dancing.
Yeah, it would have made more sense if they knew they were going to have her do this. They could have at least put that in the previous episode, or even make references to it in late season 2, just something so that there's some sort of history there. But again, this is something that the writers do that just infuriates me. It's almost like they're Googling things that they can write about. Oh, look, dance therapy. Let's give that to Maggie. And they have to quickly insert these things into the character because they didn't properly develop the character in the first place. Instead of naturally giving these traits to characters where it makes sense, they force it on them to make it fit for the episode.
And does Maggie ever do the dancing thing again this
And as
season?
far as I know, they never bring it up again. Because what started the whole subplot was Maggie needed a idea to write her research paper about. And then we see her dancing, which we've never seen her do before, as far as I know. And then, of course, Ullman's victim, Julie, is in a trance. And somehow Maggie combines her empathy powers with her dance ability and connects emotionally with Julie and breaks her out of the trance. I get what the writers were trying to do. It's an interesting approach to it. It's superficially relatable, but the more you think about it, it's so ridiculous.
When you said that they never brought it up again, and to go back to your point about them never bringing it up again, I eye rolled. So if we had a camera, you guys would have seen my reaction was instant eye roll. And I do this a lot with this show because I feel like they could do better. And I know they can do better. It's just that they don't invest in all that and they don't really give it enough thought, I think. But on the topic of Julie, I thought that the actress who played her character was very good. I think she sold it very well. Not so much the trance bit, but when she came out of the trance, I was like, wow, I thought she did a really good performance. I wasn't so, as you said, like with the dance scene, I thought that was a different way to do it to get her out of there. But again, I just thought it was just a way for them to get Sarah Jeffrey's dance.
Yeah, and like I said, dance therapy is a real thing. So I think they wanted to find some way to bring that into an episode and then never bring it up again. That's the thing that they've done in previous episodes too, is that they find these solutions that are specialized and work for that particular episode, but they never use it again. Like Macy using baking soda to vanquish demons or to exorcise demons. Clearly it works. There's no reason why it wouldn't work again, but they never use that again. So here's something that Maggie does. She uses her empathy powers to break a victim out of a trance using dance therapy. You'd think that that'd be something she would use more. But after this episode, it's just never brought up again. And that's just bad writing.
Mm-hmm. So we get the big showdown. I wanted to go over it a little bit. You know, as we said before, it was very underwhelming. Another thing that I wanted to bring up about that, though, is what I didn't like about that scene is what they did with Macy.
Oh, you mean the blue energy coming out of her hands?
Yeah, it's the blue friggin' laser beam X-Men powers that she's suddenly got. I don't like that at all. I hate it so much. To me, it doesn't look like anything to do with telekinesis. When I think of telekinesis, I think of invisibility, like an invisible effect. And I remember, I don't know if any of you guys watch Witches of East End, but they had a similar thing where the girls would shoot, I don't know what you would call it, like waves, basically. They were like invisible ripples. And you could sort of tell that that was what it was. It was some kind of like telekinetic power. I thought that they should have done that similar effect with the telekinesis because the blue light makes no sense to me. I feel like telekinesis is a power that you don't really see. So shouldn't it be more like shock waves or something like that? I could understand if it was like a little like a white or a clear or like a little off. But to have these blue energy beams, it just didn't seem realistic to me. And then the way it was sparking off them when they were trying to resist against it, I was like, no, this is horrible.
Is that the first time they had Macy do that?
I think it is because I know she did put her hands up and she made like a wall and it was like a grey, greeny colour that stopped people. And people were like, what power is this? And they're like, oh, that's like her immobilization power. But the blue effect, I really didn't like it. And it's not easy to understand what it is. It's like she's shooting these blue, invisible jet stream things and they're resisting against it. I mean, it's just one of those things that I felt like could have been done better, could have been done in a way that looks more realistic.
I'll be honest, when I first saw that, I didn't think anything of it. And the reason why is because they've been so inconsistent with the girls' powers that I just stopped caring. They could have like Mel set something on fire with her mind, and I wouldn't even blink twice about it just
Oh
because of
my
how.
God, really?
No, really, like I stopped paying attention to the powers they have. My eyes glaze over when they do anything because it just looks so overly CG, so X-Men. I mean, for crying out loud, they started out with a certain set of powers. Then towards the end, they got like their Power Rangers weapons. So by the end of season one, they lose their powers and then they develop new ones. Meanwhile, Macy starts out with her telekinesis, has her demon powers, then loses it. And now she's shooting blue things out of her hands. And Maggie was never consistent to begin with because they confused telepathy with empathy. And I guess in this season, she gets premonitions later on. So it's just a mess. It's just a mess. And Mel, I never really cared for. Because Mel's power was to freeze time, and then they borrowed from the original Charmed, where they said she wasn't really freezing time, she was just immobilizing the molecules. So they had Mel kind of do that. But in season one, they literally said her powers had to do with time. They had her age stuff, they had her turn things into dust because her power literally was about time.
No,
And like,
it still is. Her power is still about time.
yeah,
Because
but what I'm saying is that they also wrote it in that her power is also about manipulating molecules.
when they do that,
Didn't she melt stuff in season
yeah,
two?
yeah, but no, but she lost her time power. She lost that altogether, and
Yeah,
she
she.
got a new set of molecular powers.
No, that's what I'm
And
saying. So she started out with literal control of time, which was a different take on the freezing power than the original. And then they gave her essentially Piper's power in season two.
mm, yeah, they did. And now she's got her time power.
So back to my point, it's just so inconsistent that when I see Macy shooting blue shit out of her hands, it didn't phase me.
Mm. I also wanted to mention that I thought the piano scoring in this episode was good. Towards the end of the episode, there's a scene where I don't know what they're doing, but I just thought there was a beautiful piano piece in the background. Sometimes that stands out to me because I think that the audio or the music on the show has gradually gotten a lot better. I know they had someone else come and do all the scoring for the episodes at some point. I don't know when they changed over, but they've got a new guy doing it, and he does deliver some really nice stuff sometimes. So that is a plus about the show. I really enjoyed it. So yeah.
All in all, what did you think of this episode?
I thought it had a lot of potential. I thought that there were some good points to this episode. I didn't think it was done as well as it could be. I think I would probably give this episode like a 6.5, 6.7 out of 10, to be honest.
I give it a 6 out of 10. It was a great idea, not so great execution, but for this show, it wasn't a horrible episode. There have been way worse.
There's been a lot worse. Too many to think of.
Right.
Season 2. Yeah.
Most of season two.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we'll wrap up this episode now and we will come back with a review of season three, episode 6.
Episode 6. Is that the one with the...
With a sphere of chaos.
that's going to be fun. Got a lot to say about that one. Sorry.
Yep, same. All right, come listen to us next week. Follow us on our social media.
Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter, and that's Po2 underscore podcast on Twitter. And we also have a Facebook page, which is at Charmed News. It's not officially attached to the Power of Two podcast, but we do post about the podcast on there, and we both run that Facebook page. So we keep you guys up to date with all the gossip and all the things coming out about the show.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. Have a great week.
Yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye.